Welcome everyone, guys. I'm Fausto Carnevale from ESENtaxa. Today we are going to see two important real estate taxes if you are an individual in Italy. Basically, we are going to see the IMU and the Tari, which are the two main taxes that you really have to pay when you move to Italy and when you buy, of course, a house in Italy. Now, be reminded that the IMU, you only have to pay this tax if you are an owner of a house, whereas the Tari you pay whether you are an owner or you are just renting a house in Italy. In fact, the IMU tax is a tax on property, whereas the Tari is a tax on the maintenance that the government has to do to take out basically the rubbish of your house. So basically it's more a tax that includes how are you, let's say, not make the town or your city not clean. So suppose that you live 10 people in a house, what will happen? Of course you have more wasted, you need to throw off more rubbish, etc., etc. This is just to make a simple explanation, but whereas the IMU is a tax that you pay based on your property and the type of your property. Now, before going into the calculation, you need to know that if you buy your first house in Italy, you don't have to pay the IMU. But in all the other cases, you have to pay the IMUs. If you buy, for instance, your first house and you are a resident in that house, you don't have to buy IMU. If you're not resident in that first house, you have to pay the IMUs. So if you make an investment in Italy, wherever it may be, to rent, to just have a second house, you have to pay the IMU. Now, what will happen is that you pay more if you have a mansion compared to if you have a house, compared to if you have an office. But what I can say, what is going to influence the impact, the value of the IMU is, first of all, just imagine how big is the house and if it has some link with a mansion, so meaning if it's a luxury house or not. So if you're about to buy a mansion in Rome, be prepared to pay a lot. So first things, we consider the rendita catastale, which is basically the value of the house. But it's not like the value, it's like what the house could potentially give to you. Think this value as a value if you are renting the house. Of course, it's very low, but the rendita catastale is just for the fact that you have the house. This house produces a revenue. So it's the revenue that produced the house, even if you're not renting the house. Of course, as I said, the more big is the house, the more you live in a nice, expensive commune, the higher is the rendita catastale. Now, the rendita catastale, in order to check what is the rendita catastale before you buy a house, you can ask to the notary, but you will see in a public deposit, in a public office called Registro del Catasto, you will see this rendita catastale, how much is it, more or less. And this is not reflecting the renting price, be aware, but it reflects more or less a small revenue of the house. So you take this, you add the 5%, you multiply for the coefficient, which can be between 55 and 160, depends, as I said, as if you have already an apartment, you have an average, a coefficient around 800. If you have a mansion, if you're buying a villa mansion, as I'm saying, as I said already, this will tend to 160. So of course you will pay more. So all of this multiplied by the percentage that the commune decide. The 10.6% is the maximum that you can pay because the average is 7.6, 7.8%, but the commune can raise it a bit. So this is the worst percentage that you can pay. Take this revenue of the house, added the 5%, multiplied by the coefficient, and this impact a lot, per the percentage that the commune. Normally you pay the IMU twice per year, once in June and once in December. But remember that even if you buy the house in June, you have to pay the IMU. You will pay only for 6 months. The Tari, as I said, it considers another calculation, which is based on the member living in the house. So for instance, if you are four members, you have €1 or an uncertain amount, but in this specific case is €1 per square meter, plus a fixed amount, which in the case you have 4 members, it's €89.14. If you are only one member instead, this will tend to 0.60 cents, 65. This will be also lower, but you have to multiply this for the square meter. So if you have 100 square meter house, you will pay this multiplied per 1.0019, so it will be around €100, plus the fixed amount, which in this case is only 89.14. Of course, this calculation can also differ a bit between the communes, and if you have more members, this amount can also be higher. Both the HIMU and the TARI, you have to pay them with the model F24, which you have already heard about it in the previous video. Is the model that in Italy we use, the form, to be more precise, that in Italy we use to pay all the taxes, VAT, personal taxes, IRPEF, IRES. So basically it's the model that you use not to declare, to pay. So when an accountant generates the payment, the VAT for instance, automatically the software generates the F24, and in the F24 you have a specific code for a specific tax. So the IMU and the TARI, it has a specific tax code, but in one model you can pay your, for instance, my mom, she paid IMU and also her physical individual taxes, but in one model. You don't have to do 3 different models, but your accountant can advise you on this. And also the F24, when you send it, then you have to pay. So that's why this is very important. But the TARI, remember, even if you rent, be aware how many people you live in the house, and the bigger is the house, the more you have to pay. That's basically how is the situation in Italy. To save the IMU, I would advise, and a lot of people do this, to buy your first house. You can live in the house. Of course, if you buy your first house, not only will you save that you don't pay the IMU, but if you are under 36 years old, you buy your first house in Italy, you don't have other houses, you will pay like almost zero. Basically, I remember my sister, she bought a house, she's 26, and she paid for a small house 1,200, 1,300 euro for the notary fees, which is nothing if you think about it. In Italy, you can really find good houses, very good price. So, before closing this video today, I will invite you, if you have some questions, please text us, because if you need a consultancy, a more specific consultancy, if you're moving to Italy, if your company are moving to Italy and you don't know if it is convenient or not buying a house, that's why you really need to contact us. You can text us in our email, and in the description below you will find the link to book directly a consultancy call with us. So until next time, Fausto Carnevale, enjoy your staying in Italy.